G'day and welcome to Tuesday's edition of Kenty Blitz, your afternoon hit of rugby league news, Monday to Thursday. Kenty, slow day in rugby league. Not much to talk about today.
No, we've been scratching the barrel, bottom of the barrel, trying to find something, Tom. But hopefully we can. We might even get to the Tigers in the top four if we've got time. Let's see how we go.
No, mate, of course, the massive news in the last 24 hours. Daly Cherry-Evans has come out and announced that he will not be at the Manly Seagulls after this year. Pretty excited to be sitting next to you because I know you've got a bit of a different angle on it to everything that's been reported. I think the best place to start is what's actually happened. How did this all go down? And I imagine you can take us behind the scenes to how this story actually broke.
Yeah, well, what's happened? Look, it started. Cherry-Evans' future's been slightly speculated. That the Seagulls have put in an offer for him. They lowballed him about $400,000 a year, which is well below what he's on now. And the word was he'd been offered a 1 year. And there's a lot of debate in the last few weeks. Whether he deserves a 1 year, whether he wanted 1 year, whether he deserves 2 years, whether he wanted 2 years. So, and nobody quite knew anything, but it had just been bubbling away. And then yesterday afternoon, late in the afternoon, things started to go around within the media. There's a little bit of speculation about. It wasn't actually to do with Cherry-Evans, to be fair. It was a story that Denny Wyler was going to break something on Channel 9 News, and the opposition media, the News Corp, whatever, they got a wind of it. Didn't know what it quite was. Sort of waited around a bit of bated breath to see if what it was, and then secondly how genuine and important it actually was. Then Nine obviously went with the news early in their news bulletin that Cherry-Evans had told Manly that he's open to playing next year, but if he does, it won't be with Manly. And that's the crucial bit. It's not that he was open to playing next year. The fact that he said specifically he will not be with Manly if he does play, that just blew the wheels off everything. Now, what happened then was everybody, certainly what happens in the media, I love this part of it. You go into sort of a slight meltdown. There's how come we didn't know about this? What's happened. Looking back, I think Joe Weeby, who's his manager, has a pretty good relationship with Widler and has tipped him off. Now, Widler had got Cherry-Evans to come in on 100% footy on Channel 9 where he was going to break that news, but obviously they wanted to go with it firstly on the 9 News Bulletin.
Through the day, did people know that Cherry-Evans was going on 100% footy?
No, it wasn't. No, nobody was, as far as I'm aware, nobody was aware what the story was going to be that was going to be broken. Obviously, Channel 9 knew it was coming. They kept it pretty tight for a certain period, and then slowly as it got closer and they realised that the opposition media were running out of time to actually get the story up themselves, then it started to get out a little bit. But it's still what they weren't sure until obviously it went all bluey when the news came on. So out of that, what happened was 360, NRL 360, they've jumped all over it, and my understanding is that someone at Fox Sports rang Tony Mestroff, the CEO at Manly, and said what's going on, and as part of the relationship, I think they were sort of demanding something back in return. I don't know who it was at Fox who called, but Manly aren't releasing that. But the story out of that then was that 360 then sort of counterpointed with news that from Tony Mestroff that they'd actually responded with a 2-year offer of $1.4 million. Which
360 actually started saying the offer came to us. It was
well, they are now. So that was happening. So suddenly that was 360's way of countering the Widler story, and they tried to take over the ownership of the story. Now, when that was then happening, while that was happening across town, Channel 9, their little secret is that they don't do 100% footy live. They pre-record it, and while that was going on, then the words come back while they're pre-recording 100% footy that Fox 360 was, NRL 360 was breaking that he'd been offered a 2-year deal for 1.4 at Manly, which my understanding there is that Cherry-Evans was essentially saying, well, I know nothing about that. Manly has since backtracked a little bit and tried to put out that they put the 2-year offer to him around lunchtime yesterday. So he would have known about it. I think that's just some arse covering. They didn't put it to him from what was widely received, to be fair. They don't know. They didn't do that. And Fox obviously were trying to cover their backsides by missing the story, by trying to break on 360 that the 2-year offer. So a lot of fun and games in the media, a lot of little point scoring between the two organisations. But the fact is, the most significant thing, Tom, is that Cherry-Evans has told Manly he won't be there next year, and he might play. Look, I think might is definitely. He just doesn't want to break it to him. It's like the soft breakup with the girlfriend. He doesn't want to give him all the bad news at once, but I think that there's no chance he'll be at Manly next year, and I don't think there's any chance he'll be retired next year either.
There's about a million ways we can take this one, but the first thing I want to start with was why now? The timing seems weird to me. Round 3, Manly are a genuine title contender this year. I know they lost round 2, but they were bloody good on Sunday. Why do you think they've waited until this point to break this news, the Cherry-Evans camp?
I don't know. Okay, because everybody within the Cherry-Evans camp is keeping things pretty stum at the moment, okay? But what would make sense, and this has happened times before, is if he's come to an agreement with a rival club and he's agreed that he'll go there next year, one, he wants to throw Manly off them coming back with more and more offers, because the speculation is only going to increase as the year goes on and he doesn't reset himself with Manly and recommit himself at Manly. So it nips that in the bud, okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is he had to sort of get it out there, and I think he's tried to sort of stave off all the examination of it by saying he might not play next year, but I think he has. So it had to be done now to give Manly time to recover. He didn't want to get to the end of the year, say to Manly, look, I'm not playing next year for you. I'm actually going elsewhere. When he spent most of the year negotiating with him, when he knew he wasn't going to stay. So I think he's done the right thing by Manly there. Manly has certainly been caught with their pants down.
I was going to say, it feels a little bit to me like Manly have been asleep at the wheel. It's like they've got their 36-year-old halfback and captain. They might have said to him in the preseason or before that, hey, mate, we're going to give you one more year. It's probably going to be a cut contract. And Cherry-Evans is in the back of his mind going, I'm playing as well as ever. I reckon I've got 2 more years and I'm worth a lot more than that. Then you get Dylan Brown. Cherry-Evans, in my mind, has been their best player through 3 rounds. And then he goes, well, up yours. This is what I'm going to do. I'm still powerful in the market.
I agree with that. Yeah. Funny thing is, Cherry-Evans must have sat there as still the reigning Queensland State of Origin halfback.
And he seems like he still wants to play Origin, and so he should.
Yeah, and the way he's playing, he doesn't look, he's not playing old, okay? He's 36 years old, but he's not playing old. And then he sees a young guy like Dylan Brown being offered 1.3 a season by Newcastle, which is one thing that's done is really highlight how little the NRL is stacked with quality halves at the moment. So Cherry-Evans has clearly just sat there, and his management's clearly sat there and thought, you know what? We've got a guy who's playing Origin at halfback who's going as well as ever. And we're sitting here, and Manly have come in underbid of $400,000 a year, which was just way out of where it needed to be. And I think there's a little bit of disrespect. I think it's some pretty lazy management by Manly that they just went with this assumption that he's 36-year-old players in the game generally get downgraded contracts. Okay, and that's fair enough. But there are players who are getting deeper into their 30s and still playing well. And he's probably the best of them all, other than Cameron Smith.
Cooper Cronk?
Yeah, well, Cooper, I don't know how old was Cooper. I'm not sure how old Cooper was at the end. But certainly a few of them do get to that age. Cooper did get near the end of his career, but still playing good football. I thought Cooper was about 34, 35 when he retired. But anyway, the fact is, I think it was... I wouldn't say it's disrespectful. I think it was lazy by Manly that they just thought that they could throw him a bone, $400,000, come and play with us, and we'll just give you somewhere to play for the next season. They've been caught out. So the question is now, where do they go? We sit there and we wonder. But I think that what's happened with as far as the Seagulls go, it must be just a scene of devastation there today.
Either way you look at this, I mean, whether it's Tony Mestrov or someone else, you think he's either got egg in his face over the fact that Daly Cherry-Evans is going to leave, or, and it seems unlikely now, they make a massive offer that he can't refuse and he decides to backflip, which he has done before, and then he seemed to have overpaid for Daly Cherry-Evans, and then he looks stupid as well. So either way, he's got to be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, I think he's going to have some explaining to do to the owners. how they've lost this contract. And a player is such an integral part of the team at the moment, certainly this year, and has been for so many years. So they're going to have to explain. He's going to have to explain that, and the club's going to have to recover from it. I don't know how. They had a halfback coming through last year called Jamie Humphries. They let him go, and he's gone to South Sydney and been a bit of a revelation. So they are going to have a little bit of a problem there. It's going to be one that it's going to take some time to for Manly to sift through. But I think the reality for Manly is he's gone. That he just will not be staying at the Seagulls next year, no matter what they do. I've spoken to a few people. I thought this, in many ways, this was a masterstroke from Daly. It's one of the cleverest contract negotiations I've seen, because he sits there and he's been lowballed by Manly. And by coming out and saying that, he immediately got himself $1 million bonus, because the Seagulls went from 400 to 1.4 over 2 seasons. So he's gone up $1 million in stocks there. But the other thing now is, if he hasn't signed anywhere and he's just deep in negotiations elsewhere, suddenly the value is also gone up of what he is. And suddenly they're still going to be paying for a top quality half, not an old half on the way down. So by doing what he's done, whether it was deliberate, I hope it was deliberate, because I love the idea of it, but he's gone and got himself hundreds of thousands of dollars more by basically just saying, right, I'm in the market now. You know I'm travelling wherever I end up. So come to me with your offer.
Let's talk about that, because, Daly Cherry-Evans is a 36-year-old halfback. He's been in the NRL for 16 years. He knows as well as anyone that he is only one tackle away from an ACL or something that ends his career. It seems funny to me that he would go into, a long season. There's a lot of footy to play with heaps of uncertainty around his future. If he does want to play, and it sounds like, you think he definitely does, and it certainly seemed to me that he definitely does. It seems too risky to just go, I might play, I might not. It smells to me like there's going to be something brewing under the surface, and then he might already have another club lined up.
I think he's got one lined up. Look, let's go back and just peel that back. So firstly, he would have gone into the off-season saying, okay, I'm going to go and have a look at this. I'm going to test how my body feels and how I feel at the end of the off-season. Most players, when they retire, they tell you playing footy is not what drove them into retirement. It was the training that drove them there, because the training is so hard these days, particularly over the summer. So he would have got through the summer training, felt good, gone into the season, still felt good, and thought, okay, you know what, I am actually ready. Since I got through that off-season, that whole pre-season training in good shape, he's decided he's got to go around again. Now, Manly, I think, had been anticipating this was going to be his last season, which is why the offer was kind of on the low end, because they thought, we'll throw him a bone, but we probably don't need to throw him much to just convince him to go again. So I think he's done that. But when he's got into the season, he's going well, and I think the reason he's looking at to do what he's doing now is because another offer has come to him, and I think he's if he hasn't already, I don't think he's signed. But I would not be surprised if he's not at agreement, but very close to agreement with another club, which I think is the Roosters.
You reckon it's the Roosters?
I think it's the Roosters, yeah.
What makes you think that?
Look, it just makes sense, okay?
Sorry to jump out of my seat there. Got a fraction excited.
Look, the fact is this. Firstly, the Roosters. Let's look at the Roosters situation, okay? So the clubs that are said to be interested in him are the Roosters, the Dragons, the Dolphins, the Titans to a lesser extent, okay?
It seems to me, I know that there's this whole go back to Queensland thing, but a bloke of Daly Cherry-Evans' calibre, with only a couple of years to play, he's hungry to win. Why on earth would he go to the Titans or the Dolphins?
Yeah, that's true. Whether he can improve them enough to get them to a premiership. Then people could argue about the Roosters. So let me just wind you back a little bit about the Roosters and how they operate. 2015, the Roosters won the minor premiership, okay? They didn't win the premiership. I think, what was it? It was the Cowboys that got it that year, okay? But they were minor premiers in 2015. 2016, they ran second last. Okay, only beat Newcastle home in 2016. Then in 2017, they finished second on the ladder, which was a massive turnaround. And I remember talking to Trent Robinson at the time about the Roosters and the way they operate. And I said to him, what happened? Like, why did you have a great year, a really poor year, and then another very good year? And he said, well, our salary cap was in trouble. And he said, what we did, he said, I looked at it. He said, we had players coming off at different times near the end of their careers or heading elsewhere and all the rest of it. And he said, so what we did, he said, I went to Nick Politis. I said, look, Nick, we've got salary cap problems here. He said, there's two ways out of this. And Nick said, what's that? He said, look, we can all do it. He said, it'll take 3 years to fix the cap and to get it back in shape. He said, but in that 3 years, he said, we'll finish sort of bottom of the 8. He said, but we won't win a premiership. We won't be contending. He said, but we'll finish bottom of the 8 and we won't embarrass ourselves. He said, and Nick said, what's the other alternative? He said, well, the other alternative, he said, is we take it all in one season. He said, there's going to be some pain. He said, we won't have a good year. He said, but if we do that, then the following year, I think we're back in premiership contention. Nick, being Nick, said, do it in 1 year. He didn't want to take 3 years knowing they couldn't win for 3 years. So they did it in 1 year. So that's 15 minor premiers, 16 second last, 17 second on the competition.
Yep.
Okay, so they did that. I think they're doing a similar thing now. I think with the retirement of Maria Hargraves, Luke Keary going to England, they lost Joseph Manu, they've just lost Suoli. They had a big turnover last year of quality players leaving the club. And as we all spoke about in our previews for the season, the Roosters, we all believe, are in a bit of trouble. A lot of people were tipping them to miss the 8 this year. I think what they've done is they've gone away. They've sat down and said, okay, we need to have another one of those seasons where we just get our cap back in order. We've lost so much experience and so much money in the cap, but we don't want to go and spend the money that's available on just good footballers or good first graders. We want to go and get top quality players. So they've got Reece Robson coming next year from the Cowboys. He's the current state of origin hooker for New South Wales. They've already got Teddy at fullback, who's a former state of origin fullback. And if they bring in Cherry-Evans, which they'll have the money in the cap for, if they bring in Cherry-Evans, suddenly their spine has got two current Origin players as well as the former Origin captain. So their spine will be in very, very good shape. I don't think it's going to be the end of all their recruitment, but it puts them in shape again to have one bad season. I don't think they'll finish second last this year, but it's another poor season where they'll basically ride off but get themselves ready to restart again next year. And I think that's where they're going. That's why I think the Roosters are the favourites. The other thing that obviously has been mentioned is Joe Weeby, who's his Daly Cherry-Evans' manager, is also the manager of James Tedesco and also the manager of Reece Robson. So I'm sure there's been conversations with the Roosters as he's through the Tedesco partnership, through the fact that Robson is heading to the club. There's been towards the end of meetings or whatever. So what else is happening? Are you interested in Cherry-Evans? And the Roosters would be nuts to say no. So I think they've looked at that. And I reckon I would not be surprised if they do that, because the other part we saw, they did similar with Cooper Cronk. They got him at the end of his career. They brought him to the club. He came in as the dominant playmaker over Luke Keary at the time, which basically just polished Luke Keary off too to become the player that they needed him to be. Took the Roosters to 2 grand finals with Cooper Cronk there. And out of that, they've got, a template for what they're doing now.
Keary came out a better footballer after doing that understudy work, didn't he?
He did. And you look at Walker now, young Sam Walker. I think if he has 2 years playing with Daly Cherry-Evans, who will take over the running of the team, but who will also educate Sam Walker about what it takes. Let's remember, he's still very young. He's only, I think, 22 at the moment. So he's got to come out of that experience with Cherry-Evans at 24 in pretty good shape.
So you get the best of both worlds. You can win right now with a champion player like Daly Cherry-Evans coming in, but you're also still doing that development with Sam Walker learning in the kind of back scenes.
Yeah. So raises a bit of a problem with Sandon Smith, what they do with him and where that takes him. But the Roosters are so ruthless about trying to win a premiership every year. And if it's not this year, then it's got to be next year. So that's where they're at with all this. But I just so without knowing exactly where, and I don't think anyone really knows where. There's going to be a lot of speculation from everybody all around the place, but I don't think anyone is truly certain where he's going. But that's the one that makes the most sense. There's been some talk about whether there's been a fallout with Anthony Seibold.
Well, I was going to say, because you mentioned that Weeby manages DCE, but I know Seibold is managed by Isaac Moses, and Weeby and Moses have famously had a very public stoush that ended in court. Yeah,
so in the manager wars, one's just got over the top of another one, and I'm sure he's very happy about it. So, yeah, and managers, they do have a close affiliation, particularly with their coaches, and they try to help the coaches stock their roster with the players they need, and often the players that they also represent. I think in this case, Weeby's got one over, as you said, over Moses, and it'll be a little bit sour in Moses' mouth at the moment. Certainly it's going to be sour in Anthony Seibold's mouth. But I don't think it comes down to a falling out or a dislike between Seibold and Cherry-Evans. I don't think it's that. A lot's been said about the fact that Seibold was not invited to his Cherry-Evans wedding last year. I don't really think that's a big problem.
That seems like a beat up to me.
Well, look,
I wouldn't have invited my boss to my wedding either.
Well, he did have Des Hasler there, though. See, so that's the other part. That's sort of why people start.
That's a bit of a more of a fatherly relationship, right? He brought DCE up.
He brought him to the club when he was a teenager. I think it was about 17. He got to the Manly down at Brookvale, and yeah, Des has been a big part in Daly's life. So from that point of view, I can certainly understand why. Des was at the wedding. Tom, when you get married, you'll actually understand how difficult it is to fit everybody inside in the hall, and how expensive it is to fit them all in the hall. So you do tend to sort of get towards the end and start thinking, we might have to cull a few here. And poor old Anthony Seibold might have been culled in the last draft series. So look, the fact is, I don't think that's it. I think the deal's been done to go to the Roosters.
That's big news if it's true, but I like the logic definitely. On the Seibold thing, I imagine he would have had input to the decision, but there's got to be some finger-pointing going on where they weren't committal on DCE at the same time they let Jamie Humphries go. I mean, Jamie Humphries, look, let's be like, we got to be honest. He's playing better than anyone expected he would play at South. So potentially, it's easy to say with hindsight that they let him go, but they might not have thought he was going to turn out to be that player this time last year, and that might have been a popular view. Yeah,
but they don't have a halfback ready to step in either.
This Walsh sounds good though, the 18-year-old.
But he's 18. That's the thing, and he's going to be, he's going to be asked to come into a side that many believe is, if not premiership ready right now, is about to be premiership ready, Manly. They're not far away from really contending. It could be as early as this season. They could be up there at the pointy end this year. And if Daly had stayed at Manly next year, they certainly would have been as well, because they are a young side, like Penrith were 3-4 years ago. They're a young side where all the good players are still very young and on the way up, but they had this older, experienced half. So, but I think it's just complacency by the Manly hierarchy. I just think that they sat there and just assumed that if he did play next year and he did want to play next year, he would play at Manly. And it was that simple. And so I think that's why they came in with a low offer. Because the way you negotiate is you come in low, the manager of the player comes in high, and you sit down and you nut it back and forth until you essentially figure on or settle on a figure. And that's where you're at.
Do you reckon this is the first of a few shockwaves that are going to happen off the back of Dylan Brown? Because there's got to be some senior, very experienced, very good footballers who saw that deal and went, hang on, this doesn't seem right.
Well, what it's done, it's highlighted the price of the quality halves in the competition, but it's also more than that. It's highlighted the lack of quality halves in the competition. You just listen to the narrative that's going around the game and the talk that even people involved in the game at club level are talking about. There's this silent acknowledgement that there might be 17 teams and each of them have got a halfback and a 5/8, but there's not 34 quality halves in the competition.
I mean, even Jamie Humphries, right? Everyone's talking it up. It's a good news story that South have started pretty well, but the jury's still out on him, right? He's not a superstar half.
No, he's not. No, but he's just doing the job. But he's playing outside Cody Walker, who is a quality half. He's a former Origin representative. So he's still very much a rookie, Jamie Humphries. But the point is, Tom, there's just not the quality halves around the competition. The game, for whatever reason, and we're always speaking about this lately, it seems, is just not producing enough quality halfbacks, like say we're producing fullbacks. The coaching is just not there for the halves like it is for the fullbacks. Where it's easier to coach fullbacks, I don't know. Okay, I think it is. But
bit more raw athleticism in playing fullback, right?
Yeah, and it's a bit more simple to give instructions, and it's very difficult playing halfback. You're in control of everybody on the field. You're the quarterback of the team, okay? So that's probably part of it, okay? But the other part is that the game's not there. Cherry-Evans certainly his manager has realised, looking at the Dylan Brown offer, that the money is there for the quality halves if you've got a quality half. So why let this guy go, who even though he is 36, if he burned his birth certificate today, you'd think he's 29. He doesn't play like a 36-year-old man. He misses a game very, very rarely. Okay,
I think he's missed in the 20s in his 16 years.
I think it's 23 games. It's 23
yeah.
games he's missed in his entire career. That's an enormous stat. And that means value for money when you're paying. If you're going to pay top dollar for a guy, that's value for money.
This is a bloke who's playing finals, he's playing Origin, he's playing for Australia. He is a durable guy.
Well, most of the games he misses have been through Origin selection as well. But the fact is, his manager would have cottoned on sooner than anybody the value of what he had with Cherry-Evans coming off contract with a lack of halves around, that Manly's offer was underwhelming, complacent, and there are other clubs who are looking for a quick fix. Saints need a halfback. Titans could do with one, even though they're in development phase. Roosters are in development phase, but Roosters have got all the cap room. Ironically, for all the criticism they get about their cap, they've got all the cap room. And I think, as I said earlier in the program, I think they've put this aside as a sort of an off year to save themselves for next year. And I think next year they'll come out all guns blazing.
Chaz, I know you're a big Kenty Blitz fan. I think you'll look great in the red, white and blue next year, mate. Let's just quickly talk about Manly, because I did mention it before. In my eyes, they are a genuine contender this year. Yes, they got to get past the Storm and Penrith, but they look pretty good. And if Turbo can stay fit, if Cherry-Evans can stay fit, as he always does, they're a really good team. So where do they go from here? There's 24 rounds to go. Can they stay on track?
Of course they can. Seabold will just spend the rest of this year now getting them in the mind space that, boys, we've got an opportunity. This is our window. Let's go for it.
It's going to be a circus, though. Every time they win or when they lose, Seabold and Cherry-Evans will go to the press conference and there will be a question about this.
Look, I think it'll die down. I think the best thing they can do now is come out this weekend and just answer every question and just exhaust the interest in it.
Will he get booed?
I don't think so. I think he's given Manly too much to get booed by Manly fans. I know they're disappointed. I think he's given Manly too much. So I hope he doesn't get booed, because what he's given the club, he doesn't deserve to.
It's all very interesting, and undoubtedly there will be more to talk about for the rest of the week. There was an amazing number of YouTube questions yesterday. Unfortunately, none of them went to Daly Cherry-Evans, so we've given it a miss today. But if you do have anything you want to ask Kenty for tomorrow on the back of all this Daly Cherry-Evans stuff, please get in the YouTube comments and make sure you are liking and subscribing to Kenty Blitz on Spotify or YouTube. Got any final words? Roosters 2026.
I don't know about that, but we'll talk about the Tigers tomorrow in the top 4. Run out of time today.
First time since 2020 round 1.
Exactly.
I've been pushing Kenty to talk about that, but thanks a lot, guys. Very exciting day in rugby league. No doubt more to talk about tomorrow. Catch you then.